Somewhere, in a secret hideout located on a remote island, the arch enemies of our superheroes have gathered to hatch a diabolical plot to destroy the world.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Are they in the proper approach pattern for today?
Negative.
Hold the weapons! Now! Charge the lightning field.
Yahtzee.
The history of Yahtzee?
No,
Oh, okay. All right, good.
no, you said not.
I did say not. Yet.
Yeah. Well, oh, good. I'm glad we're going to get into the history of Yahtzee at some point. Good.
No, today we're doing Nazi. That's that's the same, right?
That's not
It's not
problematic
Yahtzee
at all. It's not Yahtzee. Roll the dice, my friend. Let's see if you get on that train or not.
Oh man, this game turned into Sorry real quick, didn't it?
It's the problematic bubble.
Oh, I remember Trouble. Yeah.
Now we're in trouble.
It's all those hippos that keep eating our shit.
The loudest, most annoying game in history.
You're just slamming that fucking...
Slamming on this plastic and marbles are flying everywhere. The worst game. Can you imagine being a parent and getting your child that? Like, everyone is like, oh God, why?
Yeah. No, awful.
Worse
Awful,
than lawn
awful.
darts.
Lawn darts have a purpose, that they thin out the herd, so...
Yeah, the slow of the pack.
If you can't afford a lawn dart, you deserve to die.
The lame and the infirm are the first to go.
Just like the Nazis.
Oh! Nazi!
So anyway...
That's the worst. Why I should never be screaming Nazi at any point. Unless it's to point out a Nazi.
Oh, well, I'm just imagining, someone's got to come up with a Yahtzee that's Nazi game.
It seems in bad taste. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I'm going to stick with my Roadhouse the board game that I've been working on forever.
Is it like Chutes and Ladders?
Kind of. It was in an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000, and so I actually went on a mission to actually make one, and this is how long I've been working on it. My goal was to get it done before he died, Patrick Swayze.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I did finally make it. I did everything, made the box, the pieces, the board, the whole thing with my Columbia friends. I presented it, we played it, and I don't know how to make games.
It's a long-term project.
It is, yeah.
A slow boiler, as it were.
Mm-hmm. It's a slow burn. Like Zack Snyder's Justice League, which in theaters soon.
Alex, things we didn't need for 200?
Survey says, do you think that James Gunn signed off on that, or do you think that was a Warner Brothers corporate decision?
Oh, that's James Gunn has nothing to do with that. That's
Well, I
all
wonder-
Warner Brothers. And it's another bad Warner Brothers decision.
Oh, big time. I don't know.
I think at this point, it'd be like making a special edition of Batman and Robin and putting it back out in theaters. It really has nothing to do with the current product.
Yeah, I guess I don't know the scope of his influence, but whatever. That's neither here nor there.
And besides, when you got the big Z involved at the top, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. So, the
Zuckerberg,
Zaz, David Zaslov,
Mr. Zaz.
that would make more sense. He's just killing projects left and right.
Yeah, we'll never see that Batgirl ever.
Oh no, or that Looney Tunes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember they tried to shop that. Netflix and Hulu tried to buy it. They wouldn't
sell it because you wouldn't get the tax write-off if you sold it like that.
Yeah, it's a tax write-off. It's not about the actual quality of the whatever. It's just decimal point moving. Yeah, it's disgusting. And it sucks because Michael Keaton was in that Batgirl, and apparently it was cool. I don't know. Everyone who was on it said it was great.
It has to be better than some of the other direct they've been putting out, but...
Oh, good Lord, yes.
It's neither here nor there.
Obviously. All right.
In fact,
but it is in the history of comic book movies.
Relevant. By the way, this is Dispatch Ajax, your favorite geek culture podcast. I am Jake.
I'm Skip.
He's still thinking about that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm on the fence.
Maybe by the end of this episode, he'll finally come down from that fence. Get off that fence, Skip.
Get off the damn roof!
Trying to do a pod here. Damn it.
Get in the Durango! Doing a pod!
God damn it, Bobby, we're doing a podcast.
Oh, God, that's coming back, too.
We are discussing comic books in films, but we're not doing the most recent stuff. We're going in the way, way, way back machine.
Because, believe it or not, there's a glut of superhero films, obviously. It's oversaturated. I think we're seeing sort of the collapse of interest based on everything that's come out recently and how well they're liked. But superhero and comic book properties have always been in cinema, and they always will be.
It's true. So current theatrical business has been abysmal. Many have blamed it on COVID, premiere television, sequelitis, the design disenfranchisement of Hollywood stardom, but one element has been derided and shunned with viciousness by almost everybody involved. That is the comic book adaptation and or superhero genre. While recently providing the blockbuster platform to rake in money for studios and purveyors alike, there has been a downturn over the past couple of years as films about spandex-clad heroes and heroines appear to be waning. I think that theatrical exhibition has a multitude of factors that dispel ill fortunes, so it certainly just isn't down to superpowered beings being at fault. I also think the comic book to screen pipeline may be weakening its flow from a raging torrent to a more manageable and reasonable flow, but it will not be stopping because, as Skip said, it has always been there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's debatable that comic book movies have more staying power than previous dominating but faded genres like the Western, the musical, the noir detective film, parody films, etc.
Action films of the 80s. Yeah.
See, I was literally writing the script and thinking about that, but I think those action films have just morphed into something different because I don't think there's that big a difference from a Rambo or a Commando and a John Wick. It's just some of the levels and the dressing around them has changed. All of those genres, they kind of came in waves with different peaks and a variety of recessions to the mean. So to expect comics on screen to disappear is foolish.
Yep.
It also behooves us to understand that they have been the cinematic dominator before and survived those peaks and troughs in the past. No, comic books in the cinema are not disappearing, as they've always endured and will continue so for better or for worse. Now, though comic book movies are now seen as mainstream entertainment, they were once designed specifically for children and usually formatted as serials, which played out on the successive Saturday mornings at movie theater matinees for a largely juvenile audience.
Now, let's pause right here because it's important to remember that comic books originally, especially superhero comic books, were not necessarily designed for a young audience exclusively. But after the seduction of the innocent and the McCarthy hearings, they were sanitized and downgraded to being exclusively for adolescents.
Yes, both comic books and comic strips, which were really the precursor to magazine-formatted comic books, and where a lot of comic book characters had their start, and were really what we think of comic books of the day before, say, the 1930s, 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
Those are read by everybody. Now, there were a predominance of children reading comic strips, but everybody read the comic strips at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they were in the newspaper.
They most certainly were. Which was a thing back then. Kids, ask your great-great-grandparents about newspapers.
Newspapers used to be so common that you lined the bottom of bird cages and you wrapped breakable things in them when you moved because they were so ubiquitous. Now I would have to go out and find a newspaper and pay for it instead of it just being around.
Yeah, it's completely different. Yet you can't line your bird cage with CNN's front page.
You can't line your bird cage with Nathan Lane.
Or the Drudge Report.
I wish I could line it with the Drudge Report.
I mean, it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, well,
catching shit.
exactly.
So I will be going into the history of the beginnings of both film and of those comic characters coming to life on the big screen.
Wow, that's great.
It is hard to say definitively, most because A, much of early film record is lost and or incomplete, and B, there doesn't appear to be an exhaustive directory chronicling the relative order that comic-based films were released. But I have swam these murky waters and even dove deep for a few sunken treasures to both delight and educate.
Would it be swam or swum?
Is there a swum?
Yeah, swum's a word.
Swum versus swam. Swim is an irregular verb. Swam is the past tense of swim, while swum is the past participle.
Oh, okay. So it depends on
Swum
the structure
is
of the
used
sentence.
after have, as in, I have swum in that pool before.
Yeah, there you go. I have swum in these.
Or I swam.
No,
I
you're
don't know.
right. No, you're right. I think you are correct. Yes. Sorry.
You know what? This is about learning. That's what we're doing today.
It's all about hurting.
If you got it wrong, I would have rapped your knuckles. Again, ask your great-great-grandparents about physical abuse in the school system.
Or your local Catholic.
Or sure. Yeah, I'm sure they got a lot of abuse to talk to you about.
Yeah, well, especially before Vatican II.
They made a sequel?
Yeah, it wasn't as great.
Surprise, surprise.
Money grab.
The Passionless of the Christ? So, let's get into the way, way back machine here and look at the very beginnings of things.
In the beginning, there was nothing, and then God said, "Let there be light."
Now put some moving frames of celluloid in front of that light and display it on the cave wall.
That train looks like it's heading right towards us.
We're going to get that in just 1 second.
Oh, good.
So the oldest comic book based film, or rather comic strip. So I'm just going to use comic as a pejorative term, encompassing both of those. Also, when we get into certain things like pulp magazines or radio serials, I will bring that up. But in general, we're just talking about comic-derived characters who started in comic strips, comic books, graphic narratives.
And Penny Dreadfuls.
Yep, all in one. All part of this mishmash that I'm going to chat about.
It's a medical term, yeah.
I got some mishmash in my lower gutitude, so if you could
in my gutty works.
just put a goldfish in there, he'll nom that right up.
I need leeches.
Cletus, get the leeches. So the oldest comic-based film is the Katzenjammer Kids, which is created by Rudolf Dirks and was first printed in 1897.
Ooh.
So they made their first motion picture from the Katzenjammer Kids in 1898. Now, to give you some context, film-wise, what's considered the first film, moving pictures, that was The Horse in Motion by Edward Muybridge in 1880. George Millier's Voyage de la Luna in 1902. Or the American filmmaker Edwin S. Porter's The Great Train Robbery came out in 1903.
Mm-hmm.
And D. David Griffith's Birth of a Nation was in 1915.
Woo! Yikes.
So we're talking 1898.
Wow.
Which is... So Rudolf Dirks' creation was kind of a slice-of-life style comic that followed two protagonists, the Katzenjammer brothers, and their daily shenanigans. It was extremely popular, having printed in newspapers every week. Resulting from the success, the comic was adapted, and the first film, titled The Katzenjammer Kids in School, again released in 1898, which is made by Biograph Company by William George Bitzer. There's also a second film titled The Katzenjammer Kids in Love, which was released in 1900. Between December 1916 and August 1918, a total of 37 Katzenjammer Kids silent cartoon shorts were also produced by William Randolph Hearst's own cartoon studio, International Film Service, which adapted Hearst's well-known comic strip. The series was retired in 1918 at the height of the character's popularity, partly because of the growing tension against titles with German associations following World War I. Now, the comic itself ran for 109 years, with more cartoon adaptations later coming out in 1938 and in 1971.
Wow.
But none of these adaptations were as iconic as the first.
Wow. That's crazy. I didn't know it ran that long. That's nuts.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about a lot of these ongoing characters, they had early starts and have continued in some form or fashion, even up until today. You'll find this case after case with a lot of what we're going to be covering today. Now, while this film is not a direct adaptation of a specific comic book or comic strip, it is one of the earliest examples of bringing comic-like drawings to life through animation, this being the 1906 silent short, Humorous Phases of Funny Faces by James Stewart Blackton. This film features hand-drawn images that move and transform, creating a sense of animation that laid the groundwork for future animation in films and cartoons. It's regarded by film historians as the first animated film recorded on standard picture film. And essentially, this was a chalkboard with white faces moving and figures move through stop motion.
White faces. What do you know?
White outline of faces.
Oh, like Pippin.
So that was in 1906. Another among the very first strip-to-screen adaptations were Winsor McCay, the famous cartoonist of New York Herald and his moving comics, but more commonly was known as Little Nemo, which came out as a 1911 silent animated short film by the American cartoon artist Winsor McCay. Now, this is one of the earliest animated films, and it was McCay's first, and featured characters from McCay's comic strip Little Nemo in Slumberland, a quite amazing and beautiful comic strip that now comes out in oversized hardcovers, just gorgeous to look at.
Cool.
A pillar in comicdom after that. Now, it had expressive character animations that distinguished the film from experiments of early animators and really, again, progressed what animation could be at the time, because it was one of the first to actually have expressive changes in character faces through the animation, which really hadn't been done before. Now, there was Bud Fisher's Mutt and Jeff cartoon series, which began appearing in early July 1911, same year as Little Nemo, at David Horsley's Nestor Comedies in Bayonne, New Jersey.
The birthplace of the original, remember that dude that Rocky's based on is from Bayonne.
Yeah, Bayonne. It's coming back.
Hey, Bayonne!
We're bringing it back. We're bringing them all back.
Take it back. Do, take it back. Yeah. Take it back.
That's another deep cut Rocky reference, bitches.
Now, Al Christie began turning out a weekly one-reel live-action Mutt and Jeff comedy short, which was based on this comic strip. Now, this Mutt and Jeff serial was extremely popular, and after Nestor Company established a studio in Hollywood in late October 1911, Christie continued to oversee a weekly production of a one-reel episode. Now, in the fall of 1911, Nestor began using an alternate method of displaying the intertitles in the Mutt and Jeff comedies. Instead of a cut to the dialogue titles, which is kind of what's now, imagine old, early silent films. You have characters who are having a scene, talking to each other, complete silence. They cut. There is a black screen with dialogue, essentially what was mostly said in that scene you just saw. Mm-hmm. And that's how these early films would display their dialogue narratives.
Or sometimes even third-person omniscient commentary.
Yes, but essentially they would use these words interspliced between the live-action scenes to explain what was going on. But these Mutt and Jeff comedies, they did something different. So they used the dialogue that was displayed at the bottom of the image on the black background so the audience could read them as a subtitle.
Oh, they left the captions on.
This was similar to the way that it appeared in comic strips. Horsley, who was making these silent pictures, he was very proud of this device and claimed to have entered a patent on it. He advertised Mutt and Jeff movies as talking pictures and claimed this to be the first depiction of subtitling in live-action filmmaking in the history of movies.
That's amazing.
David and William Horsley, along with others, succeeded in defeating the monopolistic hold on the industry that Thomas Edison's motion pictures patents company had. However, weather conditions on the East Coast, Bayonne, New Jersey, made filming an uncertain proposition because the camera technology at the time relied heavily on sunshine. Frustrated, he looked for new opportunities to shoot films and found California.
There you go.
Was an opportune place to make movies year-round.
I've looked into that a lot too before. Like the main reason that Hollywood became Hollywood was because nobody lived out there. It was actually rather difficult before the highway system to get through the mountains and get to California. But also there was a specific series of laws that Edison helped facilitate in New York, saying that if you filmed there, you had to use his cameras for everyone. And so that's why everybody went west. It's essentially, in a weird way, the same reason that gangsters started casinos in Las Vegas. It was illegal there, but hell, it's Wild West out there.
Most certainly. The first film ever shot in Hollywood was in 1909 by D.W. Griffith, called The Love Among the Roses. Now, while not being the first movie studio in Los Angeles, Nestor made great strides on October 27, 1911 by establishing the first permanent motion picture studio in Hollywood and producing the first Hollywood films. The company later merged with its distributor, the Universal Film Manufacturing Company, on May 20th, 1912. Nestor remained a recognizable brand for Universal until at least the middle of 1917, where it completely got folded in. But, in a lot of ways, it's because of these Mutt and Jeff comedies that then led to both subtitles and studios being set up in Hollywood and the formation and dominance of Universal Studios.
I thought you were going to say it, and then it became Pornhub.
Let me scroll down. Yep, that's what it says.
That's it. There it is. There it is.
I have a lot of information I'm trying to...
I think you were ambitious in thinking this was a two-parter. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Yeah. No, this has got to be more. Now, a lot of people might point to Scott Sidney's Tarzan of the Apes that came out in 1918 as one of the first comic book live-action adaptations. But I think that comes with a big asterisk. While the Tarzan series, created by Edgar Rice Burroughs, originally appeared as magazine serials in 1912, and then the first of a long series of novels in 1914, it didn't actually appear in comic strip form until 1929. So most of Tarzan gets a big X in front of it. Again, one of the earliest known feature films that was based on a comic, not vice versa, is the 1926 live-action silent film called Ella Cinders by American director Alfred Green. And this starred Colleen Moore. It was 75 minutes long and came from the comic of the same name that the film was adapted from and launched in 1925. This was, of course, heavily inspired by Cinderella, and it is actually among very rare company as being one of the few comic-based films that has been recognized by the National Film Registry and the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant, and has been preserved there ever since. Another film that people point to as being possible for one of the first feature-length films based off a comic strip is Little Annie Rooney in 1925, starring Mary Pickford, the classic silent era actress. Now, there were certainly other shorts made before then, but a lot of people think this was one of the first. But they would be wrong, as the film came out in 1925, and the comic that was based on that film and the series that followed after didn't come out till 1927. So, again, it gets the X. Now we will skip ahead to 1931 to the feature film Skippy, based on Percy Crosby's King Features comic strip. That, again, we're predating Marvel and DC by decades here. Now, this was also the first comics-based film to be nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture. Jackie Cooper, who played the title role, was age 9 and was also nominated for Best Actor, which is still the youngest person ever nominated in that category. Now, this Skippy was a 1931 pre-code comedy film, again, based on the popular comic strip. The screenplay was by Joseph L. Mankiewicz. You might have heard of him. There's a movie called Mank that came out recently. That's him. There's also Don Marquise, Norman Z., Cloud, and Sam Mintz. Now, it did quite well. The director, Norman Turog, won the Academy Award for Best Director at age 32. He remained the youngest winner in the category until Damien Chazelle won in 2016 for La La Land. The film also, of course, did well enough to inspire a sequel called Suki. in 1931 that was released by Paramount Pictures. Of course, it didn't feature superhero, but the adventure character Skippy Skinner did inspire many heroes going forward and has his place in history.
I will not be seeking royalties. I will announce that now.
Well, your full name's Skinner Skippy, so that's completely different.
Director Skinner Skippy. Yeah.
Director Skinner Skippy. Mulder, it's not a living vampire from the moon.
I know what you want from me.
Oh, I don't have any more of these cigarettes. Move along, man.
Remember that time I slept with that woman and her head was turned all the way around? No? Me neither.
She barked, she drooled, she clawed.
4 feet above the covers.
Look, I love you guys, but I gotta get my own lawyer. Now, Skippy Skinner may not have held out in the brain of society for as long as this next character who made it to the big screen. That is Popeye the Sailor Man.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of the guy. Now, originally, he was just a supporting character in the comic strip Thimble Theater, created by Elsie Seeger, which debuted in its comic strip in 1929, but he made his big screen debut in 1933 in a Betty Boop cartoon, nevertheless titled Boop, Popeye the Sailor.
Betty Boop, by the way, created by Max Fleischer, who did the ultimate Superman take.
Hey,
That-
shh.
Oh.
Don't read ahead.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
I'm not even here, man. I can't hear or see. I don't have arms. Metallica made a whole music video about me. Said Max Fleischer directed this Popeye the Sailor.
Damn it. Next line? It was the next line?
Which was directed by Dave Fleischer, actually, for Fleischer Studios.
Yep.
Who Dave co-owned with his brother, Max Fleischer. All in all, the Fleischer Studios produced 108 Popeye cartoons, 105 of them being in black and white, and 3 as 2 reel-to-reel Technicolor extravaganzas. That is before Fleischer Studios collapsed in a mountain of debt in 1941 and was absorbed by previously mentioned Paramount Studios.
Yeah, they had a big falling out, the brothers did.
There's just 2 brothers, and
Just called Two Brothers.
just 2 brothers.
You don't want to hear about it here.
Sorry.
He's left stunned.
My jaw agape. Popeye would then go on to have many more shorts made about him. And in 1960, King Features, which owned the rights to the character, churned out another 220 made-for-TV cartoon shorts in just 2 years. Good Lloyd.
Jesus.
They made those so quickly using deeply simplified animation. And of course, in 1980, Robert Altman directed the live-action Popeye the Sailor, starring Robin Williams.
Woof.
Which
There's a whole we should do that one.
We
honestly,
totally should, because it's been so long since I've even seen it. It would be fascinated to revisit that.
I saw it not too long ago. I was watching it and I was like, Bluto looks really familiar. Who is that? It's the Beast Robot.
It is. It totally is.
It blew my mind. I was like, no fucking way. He's a terrifying human being.
Oh man, now they should redo Popeye, but have Dave Bautista as Bluto.
You know what, though? That doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility.
No, go ahead. That could be
Fuck
cool.
it, honestly, it'd probably be all right.
It'd probably be all right. Maybe give it a little edge, a little like modern.
Put some stank on it.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Sorry.
You will be.
Well, I am already. Now we're probably going to get to one of the big boys here, and that would be something you might remember. A little guy named Flash Gordon?
Never heard of it.
I don't know who that is. He's probably the first comic strip character to make a huge impact on the big screen, that being Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon. Now, this began its life as a comic strip in full-color Sunday episodes January 7th, 1934. The strip turned out to be extremely popular almost immediately, and in 1936, Universal decided to gamble a lot of money to bring Flash to the big screen.
Go back and listen to our very first episode. Audio quality be damned.
You won't be disappointed. Well, you might be disappointed. But,
you might be. But
we still
honestly,
like it. We still like it.
We packed so much into one episode.
Hey, it was a different time, my friend, a different time.
Yeah, back in my day. I don't know.
Estimates of the money put in, they range quite widely, but the serial was roughly budgeted at $350,000.
Whoa.
And this is again in 1936.
That is insane.
That's far more than the average serial at the time, which usually ran for less than $100,000. So this is like over 3 times the amount of a normal film they're making here.
That's crazy because, like, even if you adjust for inflation and everything, that's more expensive than it would have been in like the 70s and 80s and 90s. That's a crazy amount of money.
So that would be an almost $8 million budget nowadays.
Yeah, for a short?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Inflation has gone up 2,159.5% since that time.
All right.
Wild. So again, this Flash Gordon, it was very ambitious. It needed a lot of big sets, a lot that they borrowed from Universal Productions, lots of special effects, fairly large cast of actors. There's director Frederick Stephanie, who also co-wrote the film's script, was given 6 weeks, but because of the circumstances surrounding the project, sorry, I just shorted out. Jake Bott needs to be taken in for repairs.
Jake skipped a groove again.
Someone hit the machine. Get him going again.
Tilt.
Yeah. So it had director Frederick Stephanie, who also co-wrote the script, and co-writer Ray Taylor, but it's really Buster Crabbe in the leading role of Flash Gordon, who would really stay in the public's consciousness. And unfortunately for him, as we will see with other actors from this genre, he was never able to shake that role. Buster Crabbe was kind of associated with Flash Gordon evermore, no matter how much he might have wanted to do something different.
Superman curse?
It may come up once again.
It's funny. He couldn't get any other role but Buck Rogers.
Yeah. Well, poor guy. Now, the next comic strip mainstay to garner the movie star treatment on the big screen was, that's right, Dick Tracy. The square-jawed cop who relentlessly fought crime came from the mind of Chester Gould back in 1931. Again, just like Flash Gordon, Tracy was an instant hit, and soon Republic Pictures, perhaps at that time the greatest studios in all, was creating comic movies in the 30s and 40s, they came a-calling. The results were the 1937 Dick Tracy.
Honest, Mr. Ghost, I'll never tell lies again. Honest, I won't.
Directed by Ray Taylor and Alan James, starring Ralph Byrd as Tracy, a role that Byrd, like Buster Crabbe, became immediately and inextricably identified with for the rest of his career.
Interestingly, on the TV behind the recording area I have here, I am watching said Dick Tracy serial, which is interesting. But on top of that, as a tie-in to an earlier episode, you have been to Columbia, Missouri, with me, and have eaten at Ernie's, the diner, that was frequented by Chester Gould. That Ernie's is also the restaurant that was originally run by the family of the young babysitter that was killed.
Oh, wild.
I know, murdered, that created almost all of those horror genres that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that is in our Urban Myths episode.
Yep.
Number...
I think we called it Horrorgens.
Yeah, go check it out. It's a good episode, folks.
It's a weird spidering mesh there. I think it's fascinating.
It's all connected, my friend. Now, Dick Tracy, much like the Flash Gordon shows, was an immediate box office hit. And, of course, was followed by Dick Tracy Returns in 1938, Dick Tracy's G-Men in 1939, Dick Tracy's G-String in 1940, and Dick Tracy vs. Crime, Inc. in 1941.
World Crime League.
One of those is not real. Those are all directed by the action team of veterans William Whitney and John English. In fact, they were so successful that the Dick Tracy series that RKO Radio Pictures eventually acquired the rights and made a series of no less than 6 films in 1945, featuring a variety of actors, even such luminaries as Boris Karloff, to star as the villains there.
Yeah, I literally just watched that. It's called Dick Tracy Meets Gruesome, starring Boris Karloff. That was playing as you did the first part of this episode.
That's
in
wild.
The background. It is.
Now, similar, but maybe harken back to a previous entry here, we would discuss The Shadow. For 1937, The Shadow Strikes. It was a black and white American film based on the story Ghost of the Manor, written by Walter B. Gibson under the pen name Maxwell Grant. Now, The Shadow was featured in popular radio shows and in pulp magazines as a crime fighter. It wouldn't be till later he'd actually make it into comic books. So this is closer to, say, Tarzan, or some of what, some other characters. But he was one of those, and more films came out with him in 1946 with The Shadow Returns and Shadow, the Missing Lady. And of course, in the, was it 1990? Or was it 1984?
It was in the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, 1984, you get Alec Baldwin's The Shadow, jumping in on the glut of films coming with renewed interest from some of those pulp characters and the height of Batman mania from 1989 to make some of these comic book characters come back to life.
And
Dick Tracy, The Shadow, The Phantom, Brenda Stark.
Now, with The Shadow, it seems pretty obvious that Alec Baldwin was offered the role for Tim Burton's Batman. He turned it down. And so I feel like him going into doing The Shadow was like a shit, I missed the boat. Kind of like with Sean Connery, who was offered Gandalf and Morpheus and all these other roles. He's like, I didn't get it. And then he did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen because he's like, well, I gotta get back on board. I guess I gotta cash in.
Well, I mean, you can totally get that. You have this opportunity and it slips through your fingers and...
Yeah, and obviously we both love Batman 89. We love Keaton and all that, but you can't tell me that a young Alec Baldwin isn't the perfect Bruce Wayne Batman. I mean, he's perfect.
Pretty good. I mean,
you go back to like Hunt for Red October era. There's nobody. He's got the voice. He's got the looks. He could play both Bruce and Batman.
Yeah, I mean,
it's always been a weird thing.
2 years before The Shadow, Glenn Ross, always be batting, it's...
Yep, that's exactly right. That's going to be on his tombstone, along with pepperoni and sausage.
Yeah, I didn't know he played Jimmy Swaggart in Great Balls of Fire. Huh?
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. I mean, I don't really remember much of Great Balls of Fire.
Yeah, I remember it coming out.
I love that one of the actors on the IMDb page who played James Van Eaton, Mojo Nixon. His picture is him as one of the Goombas from the live-action Mario films.
Oh, no. With a tiny head?
Yeah. Just a big smile there.
Oh, my God.
That's great.
Microcephalia?
Toadstools. I think that's what happened, actually.
Yeah, that's the medical term, yeah.
So plenty of other comic strip characters got their big screen treatment during this era, including Louis Lander's aviation serial Tailspin Tommy in 1934, which is based on the comic strip by Hal Forrest.
I wonder if that's where Tailspin came from.
100%.
Seriously? Because we talked about this one time.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain. I feel like I looked into this.
Wow.
We've
uncovered something really interesting here. Just with that.
I mean, I guess...
No, we should go down that rabbit hole a different time, but I think we should really look into that.
Oh, Tailspin will be coming up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not in this. I mean, in some other iteration of this podcast, there will be discussion of Tailspin.
I'm sure Tailspin and Darkwing Duck are going to come up.
Huh. I just started looking at Tailspin, and of course, it's... So, you got Tailspin Tommy, you got Ford Beebe and Clifford Smith's also airplane-themed Ace Drummond from 1936, based on the comic strip by Clayton Knight and Eddie Rickenbacker. Beebe and Smith also did the action serial Jungle Jim in 1937, based on the comic strip by Alex Raymond, a classic.
Didn't Alex Raymond also do Flash Gordon?
Yes, he did.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Beebe and Smith also did the detective yarn Secret Agent X9 in 1937, based on the comic strip created by Dashiell Hammett, and working again with the artist Alex Raymond, which also spawned a second serial in 1945 with the same title that was directed by Lewis D. Collins and Ray Taylor. Beebe and Smith did not stop there. They did the crime serial Radio Patrol 1937, based on the comic strip of the same name by Charles Schmidt and Eddie Sullivan. And there was Norman Deming and Sam Nelson's mysteriously named Mandrake the Magician in 1939.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Based on the comic strip by Phil Davis and Lee Falk.
One of the Defenders of the Earth, by the way.
Who, Mandrake the Magician?
Yeah, remember? It was Flash Gordon, the Phantom, Mandrake the Magician, Defenders of the Earth. What? That was in our first episode.
Yeah. Yes, I do remember now that you've pointed it out to me when again. Sorry, when you said Defenders, I was thinking of the Marvel's Defenders. And it had Doctor Strange in it, and Silver Surfer,
and Hulk.
And Hulk.
Yeah. What a great team that was, by the way.
Yeah, and Namor, I think, isn't he also part of it? He became a Defender, right?
No, he was in the Invaders. It was like Cap, Namor, Toro, Human Torch.
He was in the New Defenders.
Okay.
Man, there have been so many.
The original Defenders, though, I'm pretty sure was just, Doctor Strange put them together. It was like Hulk.
Defenders membership was fluid, yet a few members were relatively constant. The three founders, Doctor Strange, Namor the Submariner, and the Hulk.
Oh, so he was in that. Okay.
He was, yeah. Yep.
He was in a bunch of teams then beforehand.
Oh, I mean, they're all over the place.
Oh, what? But hey, this is what we do. We have to figure these things out.
And then the Secret Defenders had Doctor Strange or Dr. Druid as leader.
Oh, Jesus.
So no wonder. I mean, Mandrake, he'd fit right in.
Dr. Druid, get the fuck out of here.
I don't think he will, sir. I think he's there for the long haul.
Oh, yeah, because everybody knows about Dr. Druid. Like they know about the living laser.
So I'm gonna machine gun some of these other ones out here real quick. It's just because there's so many, especially by Ford and Beebe and Alan James. You got Red Berry in 1938. You got Terry and the Pirates from 1940. That was, of course, from the comic strip from Milton Caniff.
Of course.
Classic. Again, Ray Taylor and Mr. Beebe did another World War II action one called Don Winslow of the Navy, 1942.
That's very specific. You mean Bibi Netanyahu? Is that what we're talking about? Or Bibi Besh?
I mean, Bibi, the droid from Star Wars. He went back in time and made films.
-8.
BB Hate. Then you have Hop Harrigan, 1946.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, you well know Hop Harrigan.
Just like Skipper Gear, whatever the fuck his name was.
Or there's a good old Congo Bill from 1948.
Congo Bill! Oh man, it's like that. What's that DC character that Grant Morrison used in Animal Man? The white African. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean Congo Bill was a DC character. In fact, this might have been not necessarily the first, but it's one of the earliest examples of a DC character making to the big screen.
Oh wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
He was like the white Mandingo, essentially. What was his name? I mean, tell me I'm wrong.
Fuck. Oh man,
Bwana Beast. Bwana
Beast and Congorilla, they hang out.
They do. Not to be confused with Gorilla Grodd, but Bwana Beast and Congorilla.
Probably best not to get too deep in those ape holes, as it were.
Yeah, that's water we should keep shallow. We should like.
You also had Spencer Gordon Bennett and Fred F. Sears' Cold War epic Black Hawk, 1952, based on the characters created by Will Eisner.
What did those become the Blackhawks in DC?
Yes.
Okay. In the Justice Society era, they were Justice Society adjacent, correct? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, the Blackhawks.
Okay. Yeah.
Then there is the Phantom, 1943, based on Lee Falk's comic strip of the same name, who first appeared in the newspapers in 1936.
Right. before Superman and Batman.
Indeed.
That's the interesting thing here.
Yes.
I mean, it's all interesting, but I mean, like, that's a thing people don't point out.
In The Phantom, Tom Tyler played the leading role, who will come up here in just a moment.
Wow. Alliteration. Wow. Before Stanley. Or before everybody else.
Unlike Congo Bills or Blackhawks, or like these action cops or detectives or any of the sort, you also had Blondie, which began as a comic strip by Sheik Young in 1930 and is still running into newspapers to this day, if there are newspapers still running.
Yeah. They created the Dagwood, the sandwich.
Indeed. But you had Frank Strayer's Blondie in 1938, who came out with no less than 28 feature films based on this comic strip.
In the same year? That sounds about right.
In a row?
They filmed it over the following weekend.
I want to sleep. Oh, you're making Blondie. Get back to work.
No, it took like 3 hours to make each of those, and they just cranked them all out in one weekend.
Now, there were a number of superhero one-offs who got the Hollywood treatment into the 1940s, most often at Republic Studios, which we'd spoken about before.
Absolutely.
Who was one of the more pop culture-oriented studios of the time.
Yep. They dabbled in Flash Gordon. I don't know if they did Alan Gordon, maybe. They definitely did Flash Gordon.
They were very prominent with both their action sequences and their special effects.
Awesome.
They were one of the ones to make one of the first major superhero adaptations. That would be William Whitney and John English's superb The Adventures of Captain Marvel, which came out in 1941.
Oh, boy.
Now, this boasted a non-stop narrative, endless chase and fight sequences, and a memorable screen villain in The Scorpion, voiced by Gerald Moore. Now, this was based on the character created in 1938 by C.C. Beck and Bill Parker.
Whiz Comics, yeah.
Whiz it up, baby. So Congo Bill came in 1948. Like I said, Adventures of Captain Marvel came out through Republic Pictures in 1941.
Oh, okay.
Meaning it's probably one of the first big, continuous, full magazine-sized comic book character creations who made it to the big screen. And it was the first big DC property, again, before DC had got the rights to it.
Right.
But what is canonically known as a DC character to make it on the big screen.
Yeah, that was way before DC bought that character. Yeah.
Yes. Now, Captain Marvel was played again by Tom Tyler as Billy Batson.
Tom the Toolman Tyler.
Captain Marvel was played by Tom Tyler, and Billy Batson was played by Frank Coughlin Jr. The serial was black and white production and was featured as 12 chapters.
Oh, they didn't show it in color? That's nuts.
What is this? What am I paying for? What is black and white bullshit?
There would later be a Captain Marvel TV show in the 70s as well.
Indeed. And, of course, in was it 2019? Is that when Shazam came out?
That sounds about right.
And the more recent Shazam sequel, which was, great.
Which was a movie that existed.
It definitely was. It definitely had Helen Mirren in it,
It definitely had some actors that I like in it, but what?
Now, again, this came out in 1941, but there's a little character you guys might have heard of, created by Jerry Siegel and Joel Shuster, came out in 1933.
Oh.
And sold to DC Comics in 1938. This guy's called Superman?
Cleveland!
Would you say Cleveland?
Yeah, that's where they're from.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It's like, if someone just yells at Cleveland as a non sequitur, kind of like...
That's actually also where James Gunn's Superman is filming currently.
Oh, fascinating. I did not know that.
He did that on purpose.
Did the 1970s one, did that film in Kansas?
I don't think so, but I'll tell you what definitely didn't film in Kansas was Man of Steel with Zack Snyder, when they showed those giant rolling hills of Kansas.
You mean like the great cliffs that are in Iowa for Star Trek?
Yeah. Well, that's the future. Whatever.
It's the future. Shit got real in Iowa.
I don't know. Maybe they have a canyon. I don't fucking know. Giant rolling hills in Kansas? Fuck you, dude. You don't know shit about dick.
But does he know dick about shit is the real question.
No, not at all.
So in 1938, Superman appeared on the screen, finally. And a total of 17 Superman cartoons were made with budgets much higher than that of average shorts of the day and used extensive rotoscoping, that is, shooting live-action footage of the characters that is traced onto animated cells to create the finished cartoon product.
Action Comics #1 debuted in June 1938.
Wait, what'd you say? I'm sorry?
So, Action Comics #1 debuted in June of 1938.
Was it in 1933?
No, 1938.
Oh, yeah, it is 38.
So we're talking later that year, a couple of months later, we have him on the screen in movies.
Maybe my timeline is a little wrong.
Yeah.
I think it might have been 1941 was when the first film came out.
Yeah, because June of 38 is Action Comics #1, and then 39 is when Detective Comics 27 comes out, and then 40 is when Marvel Comics #1 with Human Torch comes out.
Yeah, 1941. So it's still a few years. It took a few years for them to come out, but that's fairly quick.
Yeah, but still, yeah, that's crazy that you're making major motion pictures with huge budgets based on basically a new format of media that America's not used to. Not the magazine, not the comic strip, the comic book. And then only a couple years later, you see him on the big screen. That's crazy.
It's true.
Because they weren't like scratching for IP back then. We're not dealing with,
No, but I mean, if anything, I think what this podcast has proved to us so far is that IP was flowing constantly to the big screen.
Always.
Especially
always.
From the comic book realm. The comics, comic strip, comic book, comics realm.
Yeah, well, that's true. And we could do a recap episode about all of that, too, because, like, I mean, we have everything from Cowboys and Aliens to Road to Perdition to Superman. The road from comic IP to movies is nuts.
Yeah, it's like this episode is trying to say. It's always been there, and it will always be there. So the first films in the Superman cartoon series were produced by Fleischer Studios. We obviously did the Popeye cartoons and Betty Boop and etc. And had such titles as The Mechanical Monsters and The Bulleteers.
And Japo Tours.
The Magnetic Telescope. Destruction, Inc. Ooh, The Mummy Strikes. I haven't seen that one.
As a villainous organization, how do you incorporate legally? I'm very confused by that. Like, how do you go and like register yourself as an incorporated business and be like, well, we wreck Mayhem.
I'm sorry, sir, we already have an Evil Incorporated. You're going to have to be able to differentiate from that.
We have Heroes for Hire. We have...
What is it you're bringing to the table?
The Guild of Calamitous Intent.
So these shorts enthralled audiences around the world. They felt different than other cartoons that they'd seen before. Now, these first 9 cartoons were produced by the Fleischers, while the last 8 by Famous Studios, which were the remnants of the Fleischer Studios after Paramount absorbed it. All these films set a new standard, both in animation and for depictions of superheroes on the screen. So obviously those did well, and then that led to the live-action Adventures of Superman in serialized format that were cheaply produced by Sam Katzman for Columbia, and that started in 1948, directed by Spencer Gordon Bennett and Thomas Carr, followed by Bennett's Atom Man vs. Superman in 1950. Both starred Kirk Alyn as the Man of Steel.
Wait, so is Superman 4 based on Atom Man versus Superman?
I would have to do a further deep dive into Atom Man versus Superman.
That is some deep lore shit we'd have to get into. But I mean, think about Nuclear Man.
I don't follow. What's the connection?
Superman versus Atom Ant. No, let's put a pin in that because we should research that. I'm very curious about that.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Now, these were something of a letdown for Katzman, who was a legendarily cost-conscious producer and had knocked out both serials in under a month, cutting corners whenever possible, and using extremely cheap two-dimensional black and white animation whenever Superman was called upon to, quote, fly to the rescue.
Oh, I remember that. It's awful.
Endless recycling of other scenes of Superman.
It's like watching Masters of the Universe, where you have like 3 minutes of original footage and everything else. It's just whatever they've done before. Oh, it's terrible.
Now, of course, the quality didn't really improve with Lee Sholham's Superman and the Mole Men in 1951. It was a 58-minute movie shot in a mere 12 days that served as a springboard for the long-running Superman television series of the 1950s, featuring George Reeves as the iconic Superman for the baby boom generation, in which Superman is called upon to protect a group of inner-Earth aliens. In real life, little people with minimal makeup who actually use vacuum cleaner as a modified ray gun from the threats of a local lynch mob.
Now, we did touch on this in our Curse of Superman. We discussed a lot of this, but this is a much deeper dive.
Yeah. Now, Reeves, who was a down-on-his-luck actor, starred in the film and was willing to essentially do anything that involved a paycheck.
Yeah.
Convinced that he would soon be forgotten in this role, but, of course, could never shake that. The Curse of Superman, again.
Asterisk, see our episode Curse of Superman, because it explains a lot of the background of what we were talking about right here. He was in the bridge over the River Kwai, so I mean. That's
but I mean, he was always that guy who played Superman.
Absolutely, like we said in that episode, he appeared, I think, as a desperate money grab. He appeared as Superman in an episode of I Love Lucy in a really weird appearance. Now,
those Superman serials may not have been great, but they still had a level of respect. That same cannot be said for the 1943 Batman.
Ooh.
Directed by Lambert Hillier for Columbia Pictures, which is close to downright parody, while at the same time being pretty outright racist, even by wartime standards, in its depiction of sinister Dr. Daka, J. Carroll Nash, as a Japanese spy masterminding a plan to destroy the U.S. government from his somewhat rundown headquarters in a dilapidated funhouse.
Ooh, you're mixing all sorts of terrible stereotypes and archetypes there. It's a lot like the Fleischer cartoon Japo Tours.
Exactly. Of course, Batman was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger in 1939 for DC's Detective Comics. In the 1943 serial, it was so unintentionally hilarious that it was successfully re-released in 1965 with all 15 chapters intact, for a total running time of 260 minutes as an example of what was known at the time as camp sensibility.
Yeah, which is why it took a long time to shake off that and the Adam West Batman to get to Batman 89. When I was the editor of a Batman blog, I got to review a lot of those serials, but my angle was I contacted the guys at Riff Tracks, and they sent me their commentary over those, and I reviewed that, which I thought was, it kind of ruined how we feel about superheroes for decades.
It's true. Again, like as he said, there was a 1949 Batman and Robin serial that came kind of as an immediate sequel. And then, of course, the 1965 revival that was the Ultra Camp Batman. That was
what we refer to now.
That in the 66 TV series. Yep, that's
Batman 66 is what we call it now.
Yep.
To the extent where even during the 70s and 80s, when we saw certain representations of DC superheroes, including, like, remember there was a TV special where they did a bunch of DC characters live action stuff. Do you remember this? Where they had Superman and it was even like Hawkman and Green Lantern, all this. It was like a weird TV special where they did all this live action stuff. Do you know? Oh man.
No, I don't know if I remember this.
It's around the time of Superman the musical. And fuck, I gotta find this out because this is a crazy one. I'm pretty sure Adam West is actually Batman in that as well. Even though I think the show was over at that point. Oh, I found it. Okay, I'll send it to you. Hold on. This is really interesting, and it actually does fit into the
Legends of the Superheroes. For centuries, the world has been protected by a group of extraordinary men and women who have dedicated themselves to fighting crime. Ladies and gentlemen, the world's mightiest mortal, Shazam! Endowed with the wisdom, strength, and courage of the gods, Captain Marvel fights a never-ending battle against evil. Guardian of the universe and possessor of an incredible power ring, the Green Lantern has the ability to perform amazing feats against evildoers. sentinel of the skies, winged phantom of the night, the Hawkman fights the evils of the present with the weapons of the past. Combining beauty, wisdom, and physical prowess, the Huntress fights a constant battle against crime and injustice. Joy of the oppressed, wonder of the multitudes, the Flash! This crime fighter is swifter than the speed of light, fleeter than the rapidity of thought. With the uncanny ability to generate earth-shattering sound waves, the Black Canary fights a relentless battle against criminal injustice.
Was this a special?
Yeah, it was a TV special.
Man, Hawkman's jacked.
But look at these characters.
Who's the guy at the front?
I have no fucking idea.
Wait, and what's this shield that's in front of Black Canary?
That, to me, is either the Hawkman shield or it looks like the Black Hawks.
It looks like Hawkman, but why wouldn't he be holding it?
I don't know. I think maybe they were trying to cover something up. I have no idea. 78, and it was aired in 79. Ironically, the reason that Linda Carter wasn't in this as Wonder Woman is because she was shooting Wonder Woman. And the reason that Superman isn't in it is because they were shooting Superman in 79. Or 78 or whatever. But funny. This is the last time that Burt Ward and Adam West would appear on screen as Batman and Robin.
Fascinating.
This is a weird live action thing that did happen.
It's probably kind of like that Star Wars Christmas special. Now, we've gone up until the mid-40s, and we still haven't discussed what I think a lot of people would consider comic book movies today, and that is Marvel and what they produce. And so, in 1944, there was a Republic serial version of Captain America, directed by serial veterans Elmer Clifton and John English, which is loosely based on the character created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Mm-hmm. And this represents the first time that a Marvel comic book character appeared on the screen, though at the time the publisher was known as Timely Comics. Now, this was a 15-chapter serial film. It was budgeted at $182,000, although the negative film cost was $222,000, so essentially $40,000 or 22% of its budget was overspent.
Wow.
And was the most expensive of all the Republic serials, as well as the most over budget.
So those things haven't changed either, huh?
Now, the serial sees Captain America, a district attorney Grant Gardner, trying to thwart the plans of the Scarab, really a museum curator Dr. Cyrus Maldor, as his attempts to acquire the, quote, dynamic vibrator.
Whoa! Hello.
And the quote-unquote electronic firebolt, devices that could be used as super weapons.
I'm sure they could.
In the bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. The Hitachi, yeah, all right.
Republic Pictures was notorious for making changes in their adaptations. Now, this occurred a lot with Captain America. Timely was very unhappy with the omission of, Steve Rogers, maybe the lack of the army setting, and his use of a gun.
So what exactly did he do?
Republic responded in writing that the sample page provided by Timely did not indicate that Captain America was a soldier called Steve Rogers, nor that he did not carry a revolver. They also noted that the serial was well into production by this point, and they could not return to the original concept without extensive retakes and dubbing.
Wow.
Finally, they pointed out the Republic was under no contractual obligation to do any of this. Now, the difference between the comic book and the film versions of the character in the serial are more extreme than with the Republic other comic adaptations, such as Adventures of Captain Marvel and Spy Smasher. For example, his secret identity is District Attorney Grant Gardner rather than U.S. Army Private Steve Rogers. There is no super soldier serum origin, and it's not used. His famous shield does not appear, thus replaced by his standard revolver.
What?
Despite the fact that the serum was made in 1944 and Captain America regularly fought Nazis in the comics, the Nazis are not part of the story in any way, and his sidekick Bucky does not appear. Now, supposedly, the reason for the differences appears not to be arbitrary, but that the script for the serial originally featured an entirely different licensed lead character, and it was decided later to replace the original character with Captain America. Now, film historians Jim Harmon and Don Glut speculate the script was originally written as a sequel to 1940's Mysterious Dr. Satan, which featured the masked hero the Copperhead. That character was himself a substitution for DC's Superman, after Republic's bid
What?
for the character's film rights was lost out to Paramount,
Wow.
who then made
What?
the cartoon shorts in the Fleischer Studios.
That's a mess. Jesus.
Yeah. And so the Republic would then go on to make this Captain America film based on essentially a story of another character, which was based on the story of another character, which was Superman.
Which is DC, not Marvel. What the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
Well, what they call Captain America might as well just be, I don't know, one of those other 1,000 patriotic superheroes back then that even Kirby did, like the Shield or...
Oh, yeah. That's
or-
Captain Flag.
Yeah,
you know.
yes, exactly, yeah.
Or a soldier district attorney for America.
It's a clunky name, but, I mean, at least he stood out.
Yeah, and so this would be the last theatrical release of a Marvel hero that would occur for the next 40 years. It wasn't until the live-action rendition of Spider-Man that appeared in Spidey's Super Stories segment in the children's TV series The Electric Company in 1974 that anything with Marvel would be used.
Please get into Red Brown. I need some Red Brown in my life.
No red right for you. You're pushing it, little man. But I think that is where we'll stop it for today. We've gone from the 1890s to 1940s. And as you can see, comics were pervasive in Hollywood and in the history of the film medium, as powerful, if not more powerful, than they are today.
Which is crazy to think.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is a bit of brainwashing and cultural whitewashing that they've done post Seduction of the Innocent.
Absolutely.
Comics were relegated into infantilized, just for kids, meaningless dreck that isn't popular in the mainstream, and that was just never the case. It's just that history's been rewritten, and generations were kind of like deprived of that, and so it just hasn't held the same cultural cachet that it was meant to have even back then.
It took, you're right. It took decades to recover from the government-imposed restrictions on specifically superhero comic books. Well, I guess horror too, but comic books in general, to get to the point where they were finally taken seriously. And it took probably Gen Xers to make that switch over, because even baby boomers, when they were kids, comic books came out, but when they were finally able to read, comic books had already been kind of whitewashed and infantilized, like you said. So I think it wasn't until like Gen Xers where we're finally getting to the point where they're taking these narratives seriously as the secular modern mythos that they are.
Yep, 100%. It's nice to like set the record straight and show that they do have an important part of film and film history.
And in society at large.
And that it's something that has been here and will continue to persist, whether we like it or not. And it doesn't have to be shitty.
No.
Yeah. We'll see where this goes.
Yeah.
In part 2, there'll be some more very interesting developments and a lot of fascinating stuff in both the 50s, 60s, and later.
And it doesn't have to do necessarily with the organic interests of the audience, like a natural ebbing and waning of interest by the audiences. A lot of it is dictated by a very small number of people at the top who either are nostalgic for these things or just want to copy somebody else or are looking for IP or what have you. These entire huge shifts in the social zeitgeist, they don't happen organically. It's these people who are in control of all this money and all these things that kind of determine it.
Most certainly. But if you'd like to hear more about that, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and you will get this in your podcast feed.
Right up in there.
Right all up in there in a polite, positive, consenting way.
But closed fist.
It's what you asked for.
We made sure you consented beforehand.
The pause button is always your safe word, okay? But again, we hope you've enjoyed. Please do spread the word if you are liking. Come get us next pod, gentle listener. And until that time, Skip, what else should they do?
They should probably, especially after this episode, well, first of all, clean up after yourself to some sort of reasonable degree.
Filthy
tip your
savages.
bartenders I know, seriously. But make sure you support your local comic shops and retailers. This is important. And make sure you have, of course, paid your tabs, tipped your waitstaff, and your delivery drivers. But make sure, very specifically, like Jake said, to like, subscribe, share, and download. All of these things, because this is how we get seen. From Dispatch Ajax, we would like to say, Godspeed, fair wizards.
Whoa. With the sickness.
Well, I'm down.
Hey, you down with that sickness?
Please, go away.